Hello and a warm welcome to the show. I'm Saria Strzemska, and today we step into the world of dinosaurs with pioneering paleontologist Zofia Kielan-Jaworowska, whose courage and curiosity led to some of the greatest fossil discoveries of the 20th century. From her childhood in Nazi-occupied Poland to unearthing gigantic skeletons in Mongolia, her life story inspired the children's book Dinosaur Desert. To tell us more about the book and about Zofia herself, I'm joined by her son, Mariusz Arno Jaworowski. Hello and welcome, sir. Delighted to have you with us.
Hello, thank you for having me.
So your mother was an incredible scientist, but what inspired the book?
I think that the main thing is the lack of role models, especially for girls, and the fact that there is this book is not an isolated incident, because about 3 years ago, before the strikes started in Los Angeles, one of the screenwriters started writing a screenplay for the TV series about her. But because of the dramatic situation in LA with the production, it had to stop. But there is a lack of role models. I remember that there was a film by Disney called Enchanted, and in that book, father was giving a girl a book about someone, about Mary Skłodowska-Curie. And this was exactly that. You have to have inspirational models, models that you can follow, that do things that are interesting, funny, and sometimes a little bit like Indiana Jones.
Your mom did have an adventurous life, so to make our viewers more familiar with who your mom was, let's zoom in on some of her achievements, because she did discover quite a few species.
Yes, the biggest thing that happened was that she has organized between 1963 and 71, 7 or 8 huge expeditions to the Gobi Desert, where they have found massive amounts of various specimens of fossils. And of course, we all know about the dinosaurs. You can go to the Museum of Evolution and see a huge specimen of Tyrannosaurus. These things make an impression because it's so huge. In every natural history museum, you have things like this. But what she found there were mammals, little mammals that have survived the catastrophe that happened. And she was, in the second part of her scientific career, she was concentrating on them. And interestingly, many of them were named, of course, by other scientists after her. There is Kelanodon, Kelantherium, Zofia Batar, and I think 2 more. So, but these little mammals were oviparous, which means that they were having eggs, a little bit like platypus, and then when the eggs hatched, they were giving them milk. So this was a very unusual mammal. But they were about this size, a little bit like mice, and when paleontologists look into them, they compare them to moles or to mice or little rodents of that size. They catch them and then they look into bones. And the most interesting part is the skull, because this is where the brain was. So in the early part of her looking into these mammals, she was cutting the skulls by laser in Paris Museum of Le Musée d'Histoire Naturelle with laser cutter that we didn't have here. And it took her about 2 years because they stayed in Paris for 2 years. So then they were looking into very thin, almost translucent pieces of the skull, cut like that. But today, this would be different. It would be MRI scan, and you would have a 3D picture. You could go anywhere. So it's a very different kind of science today. But this is something that people didn't know that existed. People knew about the dinosaurs, right? But they didn't know that mammals were then in existence and that they survived.
The book was written by a scientist, right? A zoologist with a background in paleontology, I believe, or paleobiology. So is it more a science book or a biography?
I would say it's more of a biography, but a little bit like adventure, little bit. little bit, not too much, but it's a biography with adventure.
You've mentioned that your mom could serve as a role model for young women because she did overcome many obstacles, the Second World War, then living behind the Iron Curtain. Can you perhaps talk about this a little bit more?
This is very interesting because, of course, the uprising, you know, we don't even have to talk about this. This is a nightmare. She never spoke about this because it was so traumatic. However, throughout the whole occupation, she was learning, studying, and then immediately after the occupation, she went to the university. And what people don't know is that brother of Niels Bohr, the Nobel Prize winner, has been in Poland right after the war, and he has seen what is happening here, and he has invited, I think about 500, he went back to Copenhagen, spoke to his brother, and they have invited 500 scientists, no, students, promising the best students, to Copenhagen for several months, and she was one of them. And then when she sent me to Scandinavia to learn some English in Scandinavia, of course, where else? I was staying with some paleontologists that she met then. So this was this start. Then she was working with Professor Kozłowski in the institute, and then she took over the institute. And I think that the thing that characterizes her the best is that if she has set her goals somewhere, she always achieved them. There was no giving up. Then you mentioned Iron Curtain. She was one of the first scientists that started traveling a lot because her status was so high that it was a good export, and she was allowed to travel and have lectures and also meet people. That's crucial when you are a scientist. You have to exchange ideas. So I also remember that both of them, my father was also a scientist, they organized a lot of events in Poland, and very often these people were staying with us. This was a very close-knit community. This was interesting. I did try to emulate this when I was in an American corporation. It didn't work that well.
But you grew up in an open house. But how come she actually chose paleontology? Was it a choice or did it sort of happen to her?
She was studying biology, and I think that somehow she met Professor Kozłowski, and this is how it happened. You know, when you want to do something, you have to find the best professor. You can go to Harvard or Princeton, but you can end up with a bad professor. It can happen. But equally well, you can go to some small city in New Mexico, and there is this guy who is the best in your area. So I think that I met, of course, I knew him, and this was a lovely gentleman from pre-war times, and an unbelievable reverence.
A different kind of person. Let's zoom in on Zofia's collaboration with Mongolian scientists and her experience going to Mongolia in general. How was that?
Mongolia, by luck, was in our communist bloc. So it was a lot easier and it was not so expensive also. So and before the war, there were American expeditions. So they knew what they can find, more or less. No, they didn't know what, really, but they knew that this is a cornucopia of stuff. So they started having contacts with them, luckily without the Russian friends involved. And I remember she became very friendly with Mongolian counterparts, which one of them was the direct descendant of Genghis Khan. His son is a famous artist in Budapest. And they were also coming here. So there again, cooperation. And this was hardship. It's a desert without roads. So they needed to have, they must have had the guides who knew every stone there. So they were there. They had teams of Mongolian let's say helpers, but they were scientists who were working together with them. And this was very hard work. They were packing everything in huge wooden crates filled with plaster. It had to be in plaster so that these bones that they excavated did not break during transport, because then you had to put it through customs in Ulaanbaatar on the trains to Warsaw. It's far. And these things were then ended up in the institute, which was on Banaha Street, in huge basements. And they were slowly going through them. They had specialists in various fields. Somebody was dealing with dinosaurs, somebody was dealing with mammals, somebody with plants. So they were, this was a great thing for the whole institute. This was one of the best, maybe the best institute in the world.
Right, and it's a little bit like puzzle, right? You have to put this whole thing together. But what I find quite interesting is that people know quite a bit about hominids, right, about evolution, but they don't know that much about dinosaurs.
This, first of all, it was super long ago, eons ago. Right. Then, luckily, there are some preserved fossils.
One of these fossils, right, the Dinocurius, is regarded as sort of a gem.
Yes, it's something that looks like a bird, more or less, but it's unbelievably big, and it's not carnivorous, so it's not that dangerous, although the claws that they found were this size, so they thought that this might be some sort of a raptor, but it was not. So, you know, if you are a paleontologist, you know from one bone what it is, more or less, right? It's an incredible science. It's a guessing work, but being a scientist is one of the best things you can do.
Going back to the book, we have this whole sort of, journey from Nazi-occupied Poland to then her research work. What is the key message here, and where did your mom's perseverance come from?
It's very interesting. When my mother, these are family stories, that when my grandmother wanted her to do the dishes or something, she was saying, no, I have an exam. She was always reading, always working. When I was a kid, they were always working. They were going to the office, then coming back, and until late at night, they were working. They were not wasting time. Because today, this as a book showing this is a great inspiration, or maybe a wake-up call. Let's hope it's a wake-up call for the kids who are wasting their life on telephones. You need to get knowledge, and this is what she was doing. Mm-hmm. Learning, not wasting time. Mm-hmm. And always doing everything you can to achieve your goal. You may have to make some concessions. You may lose somewhere. You may have to go away from your kid, for example. But the goal is worth it.
Right, but you cannot have it all, or can you?
No, never. You can never have it all. I was thinking today, whether my job, which was 25 years in a foreign company dealing with films, where I spent 25 years traveling. So I had a year when I was 185 days abroad. So maybe it's coming from them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, that work is so important. But how can we make your mom a household name here in Poland?
We are today in a culture that is anti-science a little bit, as you see. You have fights with universities in America. Here also we had incidents, right, with previously. So it's all, a book like this, fantastic, right? There is, Mr. Rojek is having a foundation that is supporting science. And they made an Academy of Superheroes. So we have received pillows with my mother, like Indiana Jones.
Oh, that's so lovely.
So there are people who are promoting science, and it's very important, because let's say AI will not replace paleontology. There is no space for AI there. I mean, yes, you can use it for some things, but it's not going to replace these people. And there are many walks of life in science where you can do things that AI will not touch it. But in order to be a good scientist, you have to be passionate about this. And she was super passionate. This was her life. This was the most important thing.
Do you think that your mom would enjoy this book?
Yes, because she was one of the propagators of science. Strangely enough, in this very building, when I was 4 or 5, I was here in the basements in the old studios, where she were having live lectures about evolution. So this, she was very open to talk about science and spread the good news.
I mean, the book is very captivating, and I hope that it will inspire young readers and also older ones.
Yes.
Mariusz Jaworowski, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Please stay tuned for more here on TVP World.